you all very much for attending today. That's very good of you all turning up. And anyhow, my name is Kenneth Bannerman. I'm the head of the Airfields of Britain Conservation Trust, and we're extremely happy to be here to help unveil this memorial today to Leighterton Airfield. And can I say very much we greatly appreciate the help of the Bigmore family for all your help in arranging this. Just to give you a quick rundown of the airfield's history and why this is all so important. Leighterton, the building of Leighterton Airfield started during 1917, and as you'll see in the memorial, it was during this construction period very briefly known as Bowldown Farm, but they changed the name very quickly, the authorities, simply because along with some other airfields in this general part of the world, the original name was just thought to be a bit too obscure. Now, as it eventually turned out, as is best remembered, Leighterton was one of the two main training airfields for the emerging Australian Flying Corps, the other one being at Minchinhampton, which is far better known today as Aston Down Airfield, the gliding club there. The Australians had actually come to Britain quite a bit before then, and they notably briefly operated, albeit in smaller numbers, at places like Castle Bromwich near Birmingham, which famously built half the Spitfires later on in World War II, and then a couple of famous airfields in Shropshire, which are still very much around today, Shawbury and Turnhill. Now, it's all to do with organisational changes, but the Australian command operation was briefly based at Cirencester, but then they relocated in early 1918 to Tetbury. So it made better sense to have the Australians all fairly grouped together. So this is how Leighterton and Minchinhampton came about. In Leighterton's case, it was opened for the Australians in February 1918. And numbers 7 and 8 training squadrons of the Australian Flying Corps were based here from round about then until the spring of 1919. They carried out very intensive training, and sadly, during the course of training, quite a number of trainee pilots were tragically killed, and as you know, they are now buried in this immaculately tended graveyard in Leighterton village at the church. So this was a very busy place during World War I. It's quite well photographed too, contemporary photographs of the era. As you can see in various publications such as the British Newspaper Archives, it's quite well recorded, Leighterton. The Australians then left in May of 1919. Then the RAF came here. There were a couple of first-line squadrons that were running down. Also, number 6 training squadron was formed here briefly towards the end of 1919, but as with so many airfields of that era, they were starting to rapidly close. So as far as one can gather, in Leighterton's case, it was closed in a military capacity in the autumn of 1919. But that was not the end of the story of the airfield by any means, because the Automobile Association had a scheme from the end of the 1920s till the start of World War II, whereby they had a list of what they called civil landing grounds. I've got records of this that privately held from, say, about 1936. There's a list of about 100 airfields right across the UK, and Leighterton was one of them. So this was a bona fide civil airfield, especially during the 1930s. You had some people flying in privately for polo matches, for example. And then also laterally in the last year or so before World War II started, there was also the Bristol Gliding Club. So this was the precursor of the gliding club that's now at Nymphsfield near Stroud. And it also, before that, was at today's Bristol Airport at Lulsgate, or Lulsgate Bottom, as RAF called it. So World War II, of course, stopped all civil flying. Now this is the enigmatic coda to Leighterton story, and this is what we've been just checking just now. What we now know is that the airfield was militarily requisitioned to be exact, on the 3rd of March 1940 as a relief landing ground for the RAF for the flying school that was at Hallavington. This was in early 1940. However, we've now managed to prove more or less right now what actually happened. What was generally thought was that the land was never actually used for flying, and then Babdown Farm, just practically in the next field from here, then came into play in the midsummer of 1940. However, we've now learned that the Leighterton was not actually used for flying because there was this significant dip in the landing area that was not thought viable for flying. However, the final part of the story is that, and this is a fascinating subject just in its own, decoy airfields, fake airfields meant to be attacked. There were about 270 of them right across Britain in World War II. Now, the allegation has been for some time that Leighterton, towards the end of 1940, it may have been a decoy airfield itself. Now, again, with what we've just been chatting about here, it seems it may have been used as a decoy momentarily, but unfortunately there's no hard evidence, official records at the National Archives, as to whether this was actually the case. So we just can't have the actual final proof. But just final point, just for the rain kicks in again, that all we can just say to you is that just please do everything you reasonably can to help Britain's airfields, whether they're active or disused. These are tremendously important places and we just can't remotely afford to lose them. So it's great what the village is doing with the commemoration of the Australians, but just all our airfields really need very urgently all the support they can get. We just cannot afford to lose these places. And therefore we are delighted to be able to unveil this memorial, which incidentally is now ABCT's 136th, to, in this case, another of our irreplaceable assets, the one and only Leighterton Airfield. Thank you all very much. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.